Lace up your shoes and get ready for a dance number. This is your musical theater V'ger Please, a hateful voyage to the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
And I'm a visitor who wishes he was drunk and disoriented. Peter.
Wishes? Your dreams can become reality, sir.
I hated this fucking episode so bad, Joe. I can't contain it.
Oh, wow. We're not even a minute in, and you let me know how you feel.
Have not hated something I have watched this much in, God, it might be Concerning Flight, if not. This is an all-time worst for me, I think.
Wow, this one?
Yeah.
I thought for sure that the B plot was going to be something that saved it for you. But before we go any further, you know what? This sounds like one we got to dive right in. What did we watch this week?
Season 5, episode 22, or 21, if you're Netflix. Someone to Watch Over Me. This thing was a chore. I think the last time I rolled my eyes and played on my phone this much instead of watching the episode might have been Elogium. Elogium, by the way, special shout out, is so bad I listened to the Delta Flyer episode for it and I couldn't even make it through that.
Ooh.
Everything that Elogium touches is just fucking terrible. And this one was a waste of time. It was a bottle episode. I feel like it stole my life. It was that episode where where Neelix teaches 7 of 9 how to eat, and the shuttle bay flies in, the shuttle flies into the shuttle bay. And like, as cringy and awful as that was, turn that into an entire goddamn episode, and that's what we've got here.
I completely agree that the A plot of this is pretty bad. I hate it less than you because I have fondness for the movie that it directly rips off, beat for beat, that being My Fair Lady. I am a huge fan of musical theater, which, it is originally a Broadway play. It's kind of where Julie Andrews got her start, and then it wound up a movie later on. It's considered, quote unquote, the perfect musical. The film version was famous for having Audrey Hepburn. I just loved musical theater growing up, so I was like, oh wait, this is just My Fair Lady, except as a Voyager episode. Weird, but okay. And I have the same problem you do, in which is that 7 of 9 from episode to episode is portrayed as either already having all of her social skills or having none, and it's just wildly inconsistent and irresponsible of the writers as storytellers to not have actually figured this out by now. Here we are, nearly 2 full seasons in to her character being on the show. But I did not hate it, mostly because the B plot is just funny. The B plot with Neelix and the ambassador is solid gold. I'm a little surprised you hate it this much.
The ambassador, who is a dead ringer for Daniel Tosh.
Wow, that's a name I haven't thought of since 2012.
Do yourself a favor. Pull up a picture of Tosh. Pull up the picture of, what the fuck's this guy's name?
Ambassador Toman.
Yeah, Benson. AKA more space Amish, Ambassador Toman. Felt to me like a pretty big retread of the TNG episode Liaisons the entire time through, which is what I was expecting it to be, that the ambassador's observation and severe moral corruption was in fact a secret test of the Voyager crew. And instead, Space Amish Toman was really just a alcoholic, lush piece of shit.
It was just comic relief. It didn't have to be deep. It was funny. The guy they got for that role, man, he was good at being drunk on camera.
It was miserable, Joe. I think you're the one who's gone native on this.
What? I mean, I'm not gonna say this is high art at all. I'm not defending this as like a great episode of Star Trek, but man, are you serious right now? Like you found no enjoyment in any of this?
We'll see when I go through my notes. There might have been one thing that was not terrible, but don't hold your breath. I'm gonna have to look. What was the last episode we just did? Was the last one we did? I'm looking through my notes here, and I see I wrote out the alphabet because I had more fun with my daughter telling me what letter was what than watching what was on the screen. Last episode was Juggernaut, and that was the one over on the Maylorn vessel. And what comes after this? After this is going to be 11:59. For a budget-friendly episode like this was, right? You've only got one or two guest stars who aren't really prominently featured that much. Everything's shot on existing Voyager sets. I'm guessing somewhere we're like sucking in so we can cinch the belt up to really let loose with some big special effects. And I don't know if that was before us or if it's going to be coming up, but it's clear that this was a budget-friendly episode. And this is coming to us from Michael Taylor, story by Bran Braga, and directed by none other than Robbie Dunks, Mr. McNeil, Tom Paris, in his third round directing a Voyager episode, right?
Correct. Yeah, he had 2 in season 3, and he's got 1 after this, I believe.
I want to go ahead and take a moment before we really get into the meat and potatoes on this one and point out the huge gaffe I made on the last episode we watched, Juggernaut, and that was...
we have an official V'ger Please correction?
That
my goodness.
I somehow, I brought it up on the trauma support group, but that we did not mention that the completely baffling end of that episode was right on the money for your average Kenneth Bewilder experience.
we were saying it without saying the word, right? We were flabbergasted. We were agape. We were just
discombobulated.
Discombobulated. We just forgot bewildered as the word to describe it.
Bamboozled.
We were there spiritually. We just didn't quite voice it because it was just bewildered us so much that it blanked our short-term memory and we forgot who was responsible.
Memory rifted.
Yes, we were memory rifted.
Here's the interesting part about Someone to Watch Over Me is that for being a season 5 entry, for being specifically written by Bran Braga, this is probably the most lighthearted and non-depressing. Like you've said it multiple times now, season 5 is everybody goes in the barrel. Everybody has their bad time. Everybody is getting victimized by demons of their past or shadows lurking around the corner. And this one, there's really none of that. Like the doctor kind of gets his heart twisted a little bit at the end, but that's really it. So this is almost feels like one of those situations from season 2 where it was actually, a episode that was recorded the year before.
So the teaser starts with Tom and B'Elanna having what appears to be a candlelight dinner in the mess hall. Which is probably
with all the lights on.
Yeah, with what's basically one step above doing it at a White Castle for Valentine's Day. I don't know. Hey, to our international listeners, I'm going to explain this real quick. There's a fast food restaurant in the Midwest to East Coast Ohio. It's here in Ohio and in other places called White Castle, which is known for selling the cheapest, most ridiculous smelling, bad for you tiny hamburgers you've ever seen.
The onions make you shit your brains out.
Yeah,
it's drunk food.
It's drunk food, little hamburgers. But on Valentine's Day, you can go to any White Castle and have a candlelit dinner for 2 with your beloved as they try and class up the place one night only while still serving the same food, of course.
That's a tongue-in-cheek, ha, we're all in on the joke. You go to like TJ's, I don't know if they got TJ's in Cincinnati, but any of these like greasy spoons like Denny's, and Tom and B'Elanna having this fancy date in the mess hall with the regular fluorescent lights on and like people next to you working on pads. is like eating your anniversary dinner at a Denny's or an IHOP. I mean, it's a
But
Waffle
with
House.
candlelight.
It's a Waffle House. That's what it is. It's a Waffle House
Yeah.
with Neelix waiting on you hand and foot, uh,
Feeding you cheese.
which
I
was a
mean,
big deal.
yeah,
How
I
you
mean
gonna let
Stevie immediately was like, "What the fuck? Did he poison the ship again?" Like, that's dangerous territory.
it's taken him 4 seasons to regain the confidence of the crew, where they once again let him ferment cheese. There's a pretty good background conversation that's happening here between Tom and B'Elanna, where Tom is teaching Harry Kim how to drive, and that's skills that Harry doesn't have. And it was one of those interesting things, like how long into human evolution, assuming we don't like end up Fallout or Mad Max, where we run out of gas and all the technology's dead, but like what point of human evolution, and realistically with Tesla up and coming, does driving start to go the way of cursive? And I don't know, going back to your global statements about the world, and I know we've got a lot of overseas listeners. I'm stunned that the US is graduating high school classes where these kids only know how to sign their name in cursive and can't write and can't read cursive, which I would have never thought would be something I said. And yeah, sure, man. In this future of Star Trek, like driving, another skill that just doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all that kids don't learn that anymore, because why would they have to? And then there's essentially zero reason. I mean, what are you going to do? Write a check? I mean, like, I do that because I fear change, not because it's necessary. So, um, it was a neat conversation about like future people learning to do things that are anachronistic to them, while Neelix like shows them the cheese he made, because the space Amish are coming, but they're not allowed to eat anything spicy or do anything that would be even remotely exciting. Of course, while this is happening, B'Elanna notices Seven of Nine, who seems to be kind of, looking on a pad, walking around him, and she insists that she's been watching them. And eventually she's just like, yeah, fuck it. I am a Klingon. I'm just going to go over there and ask her why she's watching us. And she admits to it, immediately cops to, yes, I have been observing you. And that's when B'Elanna picks up a pad and starts reading her notes about, like overly scientific explanations of stereotypical couple things, like they have an argument, Tom brings flowers, they make up. The greatest part of the episode might be the joke that is here. The perhaps the best Star Trek burn I've ever heard is one of the notes is 0300, intimate relations resume, and then she puts the pad down and goes, how do you know when we're having intimate relations? And then Seven of Nine says, there's no one on deck 9 section 12 who doesn't know when you're having intimate relations. That is solid humor. I laughed out loud. That was good.
And it's decent continuity. There's one of the early episodes, season 1 or season 2, where Harry's busted out his clarinet, and there's some mention that the acoustics are better on that part of the ship, but everybody can hear because there's not enough insulation in the walls to block sounds, which really seems like some very heavy corner cutting for Starfleet in these ships in their post-scarcity society. There's going to be a piece of throwaway dialogue later on once Neelix has the ambassador on, where he says, oh, it's an intrepid class with, what do you say the crew complement is up at that point?
146.
146. Built for deep space exploration. It's like, oh, we're going to try and retcon this once again?
Yeah, before it wasn't built for long missions, and now it totally is meant for that.
Was
Yeah, no,
a
I noticed that too.
warship. Flip a coin and Voyager can be believed to have originated for any number of tasks. Uh, Balana is nuts. She comes off as a real crazy bitch.
I don't know. Like, I would be kind of creeped out if someone was taking notes whenever I was banging it out with my boyfriend. I mean, I guess Balana a screamer confirmed, but I guess that's not really a shocker.
Maybe she's not the screamer, Joe. That's
That's
awfully
true. I
presumptuous of you.
I am making an assumption. Although, I mean, let's be honest, that assumption's probably correct. I mean, come on.
She instantly goes to like, I'm going to break your nose. I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to fight you. Like some real not senior bridge crew stuff. Like I get that they've often had conflicts here, but
Especially because the last episode that we just watched was about Balana's anger issues, and the very next scene in the very next episode is Balana threatening to violence someone. I
yep.
mean, no
You know
lessons
what?
learned there. No character growth has occurred.
I guess her being a super bee does track based on the last episode where she was completely out of line, like 102% of the episode. But this really seems heavy-handed, and it's starting to make me sad because for a while there, Balana was starting to shape up as one of my favorite characters. Like when they started really playing up her geek girl side, who's dealing with some shit, and I feel like they've painted her back in this two-dimensional rar Klingon smash portrayal that she had suffered through a lot of season 1 and season 2. And also too for loosey goosey, swingy, sexy future time where it's not exactly against the rules to create your coworkers in the holodeck and then fuck them, and goodness knows what else is going on. Like the Borg is observing you, and I mean I get that she's a little sore maybe that she got called out for being a screamer, but man, this is just the beginning of the bad for me in this episode. So Balana, instead of fighting 7 of 9 and probably getting her ass kicked, of all the things to be mad about 7 of 9, you're gonna pick the fact that she's observing you and your boyfriend having a nice date.
How many
You're not
times
gonna be
has she personally shot you in engineering? Like, and also or assaulted you in other ways. She's bit your cheek while initiating a mating ritual. I mean, you've had some workplace violence problems with this lady. This is probably the least of her offenses.
I have to take back some of the things. Maybe threatening to kick this lady's ass isn't really out of place, but she could be like, it's bad enough she shot me, bit me, and I don't know, probably threw an ensign into her at some point. But now she's creeping on my dating life too. But instead of fighting, she files a report with the captain, and we get treated to our second round of dress uniforms. If you are going to make uniforms on Star Trek, you are going to get your mileage out of it. And again, I got to say, these dress uniforms, we get at Chakotay, we get Janeway, Tuvok's rolling around in his. They look great. They look better than the Voyager uniforms.
Up. Considering they've been in use at this point since the early 90s.
But you see, Joe, they only bring them out for the special occasions, and that would keep them looking crisp.
That's true. That is true. It's in this scene, it's Tuvok and Janeway who are going down to transport themselves to the space Amish community, and therefore not be in most of this episode. But before Janeway goes down, of course, we have the perfunctory, hey, 7 of 9, why the fuck are you doing this thing? And then she can explain why she's doing the thing. And then Janeway can be like, yeah, well, maybe you should, date or bang it out or something. I don't know, lady. Get wild. Good luck.
This is Janeway looking good again. This is a lot of makeup Janeway. This is hair looking fabulous. This is that think tank, unexplainably much noticeably more pretty Janeway. And this continues the trend that we've been seeing in season 5, where a lot of the female cast that had not traditionally been portrayed as aggressively attractive, we're starting to go back on that. And Balana was all greased up and tank topped out in Juggernaut, and even Janeway. Like I said, this is repeated now that they're looking uncharacteristically good. And I don't know if this is part of sweeps or just a new doctrine in the
I
executive
think it's
office.
much. I think it's just much more subtle in Janeway's case, though. It's just like, they freshened up her look a little bit, and I grant you, yeah, she's looking better. Kate Mulgrew is looking very sharp, but it's not at all like what they do with everyone else. It's just like for the last, like in Juggernaut with B'Elanna, it was just done so gratuitously
Gratuitous.
on purpose. Where this is done in just a, hey, let's try something a little different here, just to freshen the look up, and it worked really well.
Janeway is the right way to do it, and Seven
Yeah, because
and
it wasn't their
B'Elanna,
intention to be, gratuitous with her, which is why it's
right,
the right way to do it.
right. Now, my joke that I enjoyed this episode is when Janeway calls out Seven, and she's like, "Well, if you're not really that interested in dating, why do you have over 30,000 gigaquads of what I'm assuming is actually porn?" She downloaded all of the xvideos.com and all of the xhamster and all of the uporn and efucked and
Yeah, I mean, she's got 400 years of digital pornography. I mean,
and that's on
that's
top of whatever the Borg have too. And I'm sure the
yeah.
Borg have seen some shit.
Oh yeah, they assimilated all that, and now you can't forget it. You can't forget the species after species quantity of sheer avalanche of hardcore pornography that is in the Borg collective.
I wonder with the Borg, because every voice is heard, right? But then the more voices get added, the less each voice is contributing. But if you have massive voting blocks, right? Like, say you assimilate a huge species that really prefers the color red, would it be possible to start swaying the Borg where they start painting cubes red, right? If you
Like
have,
switching out the green lights for red lights.
sure, right? Like, if you have enough shared morality, does it start to influence the Borg's behavior? Like, once upon a time, maybe the Borg didn't come in announcing their intentions to assimilate and improve everybody's life, and maybe there was enough morally just species that they assimilated that became like, hey, we need to let people know what we're about, and it enacted a change within the collective, right? And maybe, playing into the joke, like, how many species that are like really into tentacle porn do they have to assimilate before they start having like extra tubes, extra assimilation nanotubes for other purposes? But the more interesting question there is, how does change? God, I don't even want to talk about the Borg. Like, I feel like Picard ruined that too.
Yeah, talking about other things Picard ruined, like, it is very weird to watch an episode devoted to 7 of 9 doing very heteronormative dating things when they've kind of decided canonically I guess she's gay now. The whole episode's almost quaint
Well, they
in
also
that
said that
regard.
she can't drink synthahol, but she's over there knocking out Jack and Cokes or what. I
Oh yeah, she's a hardcore drinker now. Her Borgness doesn't make her an easy drunk anymore.
It hurts, Joe. It hurts. But anyways, yeah, 30,000 gigaquads of porn, and Seven's like, oh damn, you got me, Janeway. I guess I'm going to have to take up dating lessons. So she goes to the doctor, and we begin this tired ass routine of the doctor is going to take her through lessons, but she's too cool for school. But every time he tries to bring her into a practical application, she like nosedives. I'm
So
surprised that Tom was not a part of the away team mission down to the space Amish to get him off screen since he's directing, but he gets pretty decent screen time in this.
he does. So I want to break this up distinctly into the A plot and B plot. And let's talk about the A plot first. As I mentioned, it is a straight up ripoff of My Fair Lady. The Eliza Doolittle is Seven. The Henry Higgins is the Doctor. The Pickering is Tom Paris. And from there, it's straight up like, here are some etiquette lessons. Here, let's practice, your elocution, and let's do a musical number. And slowly the professor falls for the student, and the student begins to impress and internalize the lessons. And eventually the big payoff for the bet that Pickering and Higgins make, she finds out about, and she gets mad about it, and she leaves him. Like, beat for beat for beat for beat for beat. It is the exact thing, which is a little jarring. Like, I was, it was shocking when I first watched it. Of like, they really didn't try to hide that this is what they were ripping off. They did every piece of this.
I have a hard time
This is
caring
why
about your musical, so can we go with something that might be a little bit more applicable to science fiction, which is She's All That, the 1999 romance comedy featuring Freddie Prinze Jr.,
well,
aka
She's
God,
All
what was his
That
name
is
in
it was made to be a modern version of My Fair Lady, dude. That's literally the DNA of that movie.
But Freddie Prinze Jr. was in Mass Effect 3, and I care about Mass Effect 3, so I'm gonna go. I actually think
Freddie Prinze Jr. takes a lot of BioWare voice acting checks. That's where most of his money has come for the last decade.
Well, he's also in Star Wars Rebels. I mean, this dude's got a lot of star properties in his things.
Well, Freddie Prinze Jr. realized he wasn't going to be pretty forever, and he needed to get, him and his fading hairline needed to get off camera and into voice acting.
I appreciate it. I'm down. I think She's All That actually came out while I was still working at the movie theater, which is why I'm a little bit more familiar with that. But
I mean, everyone our age saw this. She's All That. Was it Rachel Lee Cook was the girl in that, right?
With like the overly circular head. Yeah, yes. Rachel Lee Cook. Yep. And then of course, everybody's favorite Scooby, Matthew Lillard, and Paul Walker was in that.
Oh yeah.
I thought Paul Walker was only in Fast and Furious. I think that was like an ecosystem. He was not. Kevin Pollak's in it.
Paul Walker was.
Usher's in there. Lil Kim's in there. Can we just talk about She's All That instead of fucking someone to watch over me?
I will say that Rachel Lee Cook was on a TNT show where she was playing a police captain or something, and she hasn't aged enough to make me believe that, even though her age is technically correct. Because it's been 20 years since that fucking movie came out, right?
Yeah.
And so, you're like, oh, okay, like you are now the age to be a person of authority, except you still just look like the 16-year-old, from She's All That, coming down the steps to that, what was that fucking song in the 90s? It was in every fucking soundtrack.
There she go. No.
Yeah. Fuck. Someone, oh God, you know what? We've got people on the trauma support group who will bail us out on this one.
The best rendition of this formula, though, is going to fall into Not Another Teen Movie, which is one of my all-time favorites, which really combines all those tropes together the best. We got Chris Evans pre-dick pic back in his early years.
Well, I mean, almost everything is pre-dick pic Chris Evans now.
That's the new Before Christ and Immunodomini. There is an infuriating part of this episode, Joe, that, and again, it's the writers being cute, them tossing and things like, oh, we cured the Vidian fish. Wow, that's huge. But how the
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. Stevie wanted to inform me that the song that we were referencing was Kiss Me by Sixpence None the Richer. She remembered it from memory. It was from memory.
She must have been a young girl in the 90s, man.
Yeah, it's that. Well, yes, she was. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Continue.
How the fuck does the Doctor have pictures of species 8472 humping?
Well, I also, that information was clearly incorrect because we know that their sexuality rotates entirely around Chakotay. I mean, about
rightfully
the design.
So.
Rightfully so. They are entirely Chakotay sexual. The different aspects of the Chakotay are what they kind of circulate. So, I mean, they already know that. Like, they've got firsthand information.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a stupid trash episode, I get. But again, just these throwaway little zingers that the writers have been sprinkling in lately. the picture of the two aliens hooking up, the fact that there's, I take that back. Maybe at the end, was it? It wasn't nothing human. What was the one in the flesh?
In the flesh.
They did get pretty chummy with species 8472 towards the end before they departed, right?
Yeah, they all peace agreement, and they're like, okay, so we're going to abandon this place, but we'll take you around and show you what we did before we go.
Yeah.
And they kind of they like chilled out for a while.
So unless the doctor got over there with his holo camera and caught some of them not in their disguises as they were about to hook up, like, this is a
Because
pretty...
that's what you do when you've made new friends, is you fuck in front of them. Obviously.
And that's how you can tell that B'Elanna and Seven still aren't friends, because B'Elanna has not consensually fucked in front of her. She's still done it loudly behind closed doors.
That could be a 24th century thing. It is a freaky time in the galaxy. Like,
if you have your captains and medical officers' permission, of course.
Or you're just Will Riker and you're so potent that you have special permission from the Federation president to override those regulations, which is what my canon is that Will Riker basically had a permanent hall pass to fuck whatever aliens he wanted.
Yeah, he's a 00. He's got permission to kill.
Yeah. He can just break the rules.
The doctor starts giving her love lessons, and we get dragged back to Sandrine's, which is Tom Paris's French brothel, opium den, whatever the fuck it was, pool hall.
For the last time, by the way.
Thank God, because 4 lines above my entry into Sandrine's in my notes, I put, I do not want to be watching this. And when they broke out Sandrine's, I just groaned to myself, how the fuck is this set still intact on the Voyager lot? We have not seen this place in, I can't even remember the last time they had it out here. Like, it has been a long time, and I would have bet money that they tore that set down a long time ago, because they basically replaced it with the Talaxian Polynesian resort, which we haven't seen in a while either. And boy, do they try to get the last couple drops of use out of this. Sandrine's probably makes up half the set, to the point where they're like even bringing the B storyline onto it.
I know this isn't the same set because it certainly felt and looked different. So I would wager that they built something specifically for this episode. Probably didn't build as much, because they only basically used it in 2 scenes. But it felt a little different and a little off from the way it appeared probably when they had it built for that entire season, which is like seasons, probably season 1 and season 2.
I agree to that. The doctor tries fleshing out Seven to make her seem a little bit more human, and we come across the fact that she likes to sing. And then we get subjected to some super cringe, like, I actually fast forwarded through their singing.
Jerry Ryan has a really nice voice, though.
I don't care.
I mean, it wasn't the rain in Spain, but that was the point, right? Like, they don't have the rights to do like a big musical number, which was the problem when they were shooting the Hirogen Nazi LARPing episodes, right? Like, they had to find songs for 7 of 9 / Jerry Ryan to sing that Paramount owned. So like,
that wasn't bad,
right.
That it wasn't a long song, it wasn't cringy, it was like, oh cool, she's got some pipes on her, not bad. And they moved on, and this was like, all right, great, Bob Picardo can sing and Jerry can sing, and now they're going to sing for like what feels like half an hour, and then I'm watching like first Kess and now Seven, and we're really making the doctor out to be this lecherous old man hologram who goes after young women who view him as a fatherly figure. Like, this episode did not do the doctor any favors at all.
But he never really went after Kess.
Dude, he was all about Kess. Even to the point where
there was never any direct implication of that. You can imply it, but that is never something they actually did an episode about.
Even when his program's falling apart and he's hallucinating in the first Barkley episode, Kess is his fucking wife. Like, I think it's safe to say that the Doctor certainly had feelings for Kes. And God forbid I evoke, Elogium. Like, he's the one there doing like all the mating ritual stuff, like massaging her feet so her tongue doesn't swell up and like all that other stuff. Doc had it in for Kes. Maybe not as bad as we get led to believe he's got it for 7 here, but the Doctor, if he's got his 30 gigaquads of porn, it's probably like professor humping the student stuff. He's less babysitter stuff, more like inappropriate professor.
Speaking, so they have the classic bet after Tom wanders down into the hologram and the holographic fuck den and is like, "Hey, where'd you put my pool table?" Of course, they didn't include in this set build, so that's why they had to have a line of dialogue about it. And they make the bet of like, if you can actually get her a date that she doesn't terrify into trying to space themselves, then I'll work double shifts in medbay for a month. And they make the bet. She comes over and is like, "All right, I have mastered all of the small talk. We can move on." And she elects to move on by selecting a crew member to go on a date with. In another bit of fun dialogue, is she has this exchange with Harry Kim, who, of course, tried to shoot his shot and horrifically missed a season ago with 7 of 9, who he is informed he is not one of the candidates for potential mating. But it is Lieutenant Chapman who is ultimately selected because he's an efficient engineer and apparently also a nice guy.
Chapman comes off as some sort of comedy bit from Mad TV. He's like all teeth and fumbling. That's the only real takeaway I've got about this guy. Sadly, it couldn't be Hogan because Hogan got eaten by a space worm.
It's needed to be Lieutenant Howdy Doody.
Baxter, yeah, man. Why wasn't it Baxter? We've never really seen that guy ever again, but
Baxter encountered everybody in Twisted on his way back from doing all those sweet lat pulls, and then he just wandered off the ship and he was gone.
Sorry, I've completely exhausted the
Rip Baxter
supply of skull crushers, so I'm gonna dip. He was one of the people that was slated as potentially staying behind on the 37's Magical World of Tomorrow that we never got to see. Robert Duncan McNeil would go on Files saying how delighted he was that this was a crew-centric episode, that we were really spending a lot of time with the main characters. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but listening to Delta Flyers, it's very interesting to hear him say the complete opposite of what we've been saying, in that everything should be about the crew. There should be no secondary characters, and that we should be giving them all the time and all that growth. Whereas I think you and I both agree that like some of the best moments we see on the show like are involving other crew members, seeing what the rest of the life is for the lower decks, and hearing their stories. Maybe not necessarily Samantha Wildman, who
you cannot stand. Right.
But yeah, you know what? I take that back. Maybe it's nice to see people like Chapman and I forget who the other guy is and how they're interacting with the rest. Watching Lower Decks has made me think about some things, Joe. And I've seen it before in the technical manuals that like the junior grade officers basically sleep in hallways in like this very naval bunking system.
Correct. They show that in some of the older movies, some of the original crew movies.
Getting stranded in the Delta Quadrant takes on a whole new meaning when you're like, wow, the rest of my life I'm going to be sleeping in a bunk bed.
I'm trying to remember if there was ever a like book or technical manual or something that I feel like I know this for some reason, right? It's one of those factoids that like is in your head and you wonder how it got there.
Technical manuals for sure. The TNG Red Book.
I feel like there was some piece of information like that for Voyager that I saw, where there was an actual explanation either in the series Bible or one of those alternative sources, where a lot of the guest quarters and quarters of the deceased crew members were essentially used to provide additional living space to compensate for the fact that, like, otherwise you'd have people living in bunks. So it wasn't, you had roommates and you had people like two living in like an efficiency apartment type of situation, but it wasn't nearly as bad as like you're hot racked and, you know, this essentially a dorm room.
Yeah, I would have been like, you know what, I'm staying on this 37's planet for sure. I cannot take sleeping in a bed that's already warm from the guy who was sleeping in it before me. I don't care what kind of space pajamas we're wearing. We, you know, as this Doctor 7 romance starts to simmer in the Doctor's brain, Tom Paris magically picks up on it, which I felt was a pretty big jump to conclusion. The Doctor had never actually, I feel, outwardly broadcast any of these secret feelings he had been developing. So for Tom to latch onto that,
You know, Tom Paris is good at a few things. He's good at
he's
flying the
good at
ship.
everything. He's the Mary
Oh,
Sue.
hold
Joe.
on. I was I was getting to that. I was going to say he's good at flying the ship. He's good at being an undersea adventurer. He's good at prison shanking. But you know, of all of his many talents that we've seen throughout the show, he is excellent at knowing when people want to fuck.
He's a sex empath, a sex
yes,
path.
he is. He's a sex empath. And so all of a sudden, just like the RZA alarm goes off in his head and he knows, oh, someone wants to fuck in here. Oh my God. And then he just kind of like looks at the Doctor and it's you. You're the one who's got the fuck energy.
There's two things I'm here to do: fix combustion-based engines and knowing people want to fuck, and I'm all out of carburetors.
So yes, they force that revelation onto the show so that they can have the Hackney dialogue where, you know, Paris says, "Go tell her how you feel, Doctor," and you know he can fail to do that, of course.
There's a date with Chapman I wanted to touch on real quick. We have the triumphant return of ugly future clothes.
Yes, it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
We've had some actual good looking future clothes. So this was a nice return to form.
We find out that when you want to have a nice date night, that you don't necessarily have to do it in Neelix's mess hall while people are working next to you. You could just use the holodeck and have lobster brought out, which gets completely wasted. So I guess we're past any sort of giving a shit about replicated rations and all that fun. I also want to jump into another observation too. If we are to say that Voyager was a ship that was built for long-term exploration, like the fact there's not really a proper 10 forward really seems out of place for a ship like this. Because if you'll recall, what the mess hall originally was the captain's private dining area.
That's correct. Yeah, that was like from episode like fucking 2.
Yeah, that seems like a real big oversight to not really give the crew any sort of communal bar space. Eventually, 7 starts to break loose from wanting to date, but then the Doctor's like, well, hey, we've got this reception for the B plot, Daniel Tosh's big party. You want to go with me as my date? And 7's like, yeah, I would, and it's going to be real keen. And then I suppose we should talk about the B plot here because they converge in kind of the same place. So you got the Space Amish version of Daniel Tosh, which is Daniel Tosh in the face, but like Gene Simmons hair.
I'm looking at a picture of him to see.
You don't see Daniel Tosh all over this guy's face.
I just don't. I'm sorry.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time you're wrong, but go ahead and look up Gene Simmons' hair.
Shots fucking fired. My God. I get the Gene Simmons hair. That I'm seeing. Well, but I just don't see the Daniel Tosh part. I'm sorry.
It's the jaw. It's the cheekbones. It's there. The people in the trauma support group prove you wrong. Pure slapstick here. And again, I figured that the end reveal was going to be that it was a big test or whatever, but no, this guy's just a lush. There's a cool shout out to some spicy Bajoran food that
Yeah,
Neelix.
Hasperat. Yeah, they start out with that, which is a big thing in DS9, as you might imagine.
Is it?
Oh yeah, it gets mentioned a lot. It's Kira's favorite food.
Hmm. So the guy wants to have all of the desserts and all of the luxury and drink all of the wine and booze and go on to the holodeck and fuck all of the holograms in all of their hollow holes.
Oh yeah, he finds every vice, and it is played in 100% for laughs. You know, he's at first he's gorging himself on food. Then, as you mentioned, like Neelix tries to find him for his reception, and he's half drunk, hanging out with literal sex toys that someone programmed. It's clear that he
Harry
found
Kim.
them in the database.
These
So
volleyball players are very easy for me to get inside. This talented young programmer, Harry Kim, knows his way
it's
around the hollow holes.
I would have been. I think it would have been even spicier if he had found Bolana's like holographic sex toy. Remember that? It was like some buff
mean the one where she
Polynesian dude
kills
with
all
a
the,
fig leaf.
Oh, I thought you were about the Cardassian murder cave. Like,
No, no,
why
no.
couldn't-
The episode where the Polynesian fuck resort is introduced, and they have the scene where she comes in with her bathing suit on, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, and everyone's like, oh, hey, or I think it's Neelix is like, I'm sorry if you're offended by all of the eye candy. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then like her buff sex toy comes walking out. It's like, you know, some guy with abs on his abs and a fig leaf for a bathing suit, and it's like, oh, okay, we're equal opportunity here in the 24th
They
century.
call that
Everyone's
guy
got
Leather
sex
Penis
toys.
Sheath, I think. I remember him.
Sounds right. I don't know if it's correct, but it feels correct. You know,
I don't know, Joe. Now that the idea has been introduced that the Cardassian murder cave wasn't necessarily just a murder cave, B'Elanna might be a lot more kinky than I've given her credit for.
dude, you're the one who was downing her being a screamer at the beginning of this episode. So if you're coming around, like, the book is open on B'Elanna being a sex freak, as far as I'm concerned.
This whole thing, the most visible throwback I have to the Neelix running after a rogue diplomat. I mean, obviously, like I said, there was that Liaisons episode, but in big media, there was Get Him to the Greek, which was...
Oh, that movie's fucking great.
And that feels like that was a remake of something else, but it's a pretty classic. I think this whole episode is just Brand Browner like, God, I really like She's All That and whatever the predecessor to Get It to the Greek was. What if we just make this episode that's just a bunch of TV and movies that I like, and we'll pass it off as Star Trek. You know, what's his face got to do his David Lynch homage? Like, why can't I do this? Oh wait, I'm executive producer. I can do it. We're gonna do it.
We've done it. It's done now.
Yeah. Hey, make Dunky, make Robert Dunks direct it. He's desperate to direct. He'll do it.
He'll do anything.
Yeah. What was the first one he did that he got stuck with? Oh, the
don't like the Hellmouth. Yeah, the one I would, which was another episode I liked and you fucking hated.
Because it's got spiritual bullshit.
Yeah, it tickles your spirit balls, and you know I fucking am a sucker for that. I'm also a sucker for episodes of Star Trek that are direct ripoffs of beloved musicals, obviously. So we know what my weaknesses are. They're very specific.
What was the second one?
The second episode he directed, Unity.
Yeah. I like Unity, though. That was a good one.
It was.
And his punishment for getting a good one was getting this one. So this guy's a complete mess. He skips all his little prayer sessions. Neelix finds him in Sandrine's because they just can't let this goddamn thing go without cramming it in as much as they possibly can first.
I built that fucking set. They're going to use it, damn it.
Yeah, so he goes down to Cheers and finds him with like some hollow hookers hanging off of him, and he's like, "No, we got to go to your party, have some coffee." And then he ends up in the mess hall at his reception, and there's Tom Paris telling him some jokks, real cringy shit. I'm super checked out. 7 to 9 blows up.
It was like dad humor level hologram jokes, but I loved the guest star that they had playing this ambassador, the way that he just gets sauced, and particularly when he starts hitting on Seven of Nine, he's just desperate
I
to,
don't get how you're going to be
breach her shields.
all over this guest star, and then you were like super cold to that Devore defector who Janeway had her romance with. Like,
I was cold to him because that was supposed to be played for some sort of serious romantic foil, which I never bought. Like I just never got a feel like that was a thing. I didn't like his performance in that role. And this is just comedy, It's not hard. Like this is the kind of shit that you get somebody with a little bit of, gusto and set them loose and be like, all right, be hammered. And they can do it, they can do it.
predictably, the lecherous ambassador tries to corner jilted Seven of Nine, who has just discovered somehow that there was a bet going on in the background as to whether or not she could date properly between Tom and the doctor. And I was looking forward to her like ripping his arm off or doing some real shit, but instead she kind of like brushes him aside, and then he has a hissy fit and passes out. And we have this little moral conundrum that we get hit with, that it's against this guy's religion to operate on him with unsanctified techniques. But then the doctor's like, hey, remember when I completely ignored what everybody has ever said on the operating table and just done whatever I wanted anyways? And they heal him with nano particles,
Yeah, with
Borg
Borg
pixie dust.
Yes.
As if the episode couldn't get any worse.
I liked the should we do this? And they all kind of like look at each other and they look down, they look at each other like, yeah, let's just do this. Like it was a cool comedy beat of like, what's a responsible thing to do here? Fuck it. Let's just solve this problem with Borg pixie dust. It was a rare moment of reflection on their own absurdity,
Well, B'Elanna begged you not to save her life when there was a parasite killing her because it was going to be with knowledge of someone who was a war criminal, and you ignored that. So yeah, let's do it. Everybody reassembles one last time back in the transporter room so we could receive Janeway back onto the ship. And we get a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge from the head Amish guy. Like, yeah, what's it called? Rumspringer?
Yes. The space Amish goes on Rumspringer is definitely the way to explain what happens.
Mm-hmm. And then we see the doctor confronting Seven of Nine and telling him her true feelings. But wouldn't you know it, it was all a dream. Seven knocks on the door. They're really on the holodeck, which, when's the last time you ever saw someone ring the doorbell to the holodeck? This might have been a first for the entire Star Trek property. She comes
especially
in with
Seven of Nine, who usually bursts into places and then shoots it up. So her her actually having that kind of courtesy is definitely unique.
Absolutely. She's like, hey, here's a tricorder that's 33% better than all the other tricorders, which I'm curious now if that technology gets disseminated through the rest of the ship or if the doctor just hogs it. And she's like, hey, thanks. And he's like, oh gosh, we're gonna be friends. And she's like, yeah, there's nobody on the ship that I'm interested in, because that crackhead is back on Earth doing space heroin with jail pipes in her future. That piece of garbage Raffi I'm gonna fall in love with in Picard. That's where this character's going, right in the trash can. So you don't want to be around me, Doc.
Anyway, so that's the episode. Peter hated it, and I am incapable of hating it because I have special weaknesses for what this episode is doing. So bottom line, if you're a normal person, it's terrible. But if you're an enlightened person, a better person, a person who enjoys musical theater, you'll love it.
Or if you like She's All That, the 1999.
Yes, if you also enjoyed watching She's All That, which is, My Fair Lady except in 1999.
On the other hand, if you hate Sandrines or watching 7 of 9 go through baby steps to accomplish normal human tasks, or watch people pretend to be drunk, or anything else this episode is littered with, do yourself a favor and skip Something to Watch Over Me, which I think is very clearly the low point of season 5 for me, and maybe even the back half of Voyager. Like, I'm gonna have to really sit down and do my homework and see what in recent memory could possibly be this big of a waste of time.
God, you're so harsh. You're so harsh on the classics, man.
I don't think I am, Joe. But moving on, we're getting into season 5, episode 23 or 22 if you're going by Netflix. 11:59, and we see Neelix walking down the hallway with Janeway. A little walk and talk. The Voyager crew members swap stories of their family histories. Yuck. Janeway is most proud of her ancestor, Sharon O'Donnell, a celebrated astronaut.
This episode is completely fucking bizarre to me. I'm very interested in rewatching it because it's been so long since I've seen it. But when I remember watching this for the first time and being just baffled by its existence, like what the fuck is this? This isn't an episode of Star Trek Voyager, that's for sure. That's what I thought, and this is one I have avoided rewatching just because I'm like, no, I'm not watching 11:59. That one's fucking just bizarre.
Here's my problem, Joe. You know who is a Voyager crew member that has a family history? Chakotay. And I just got beat over the face, neck, and chest area by Chakotay's family history in the fight. I am not looking forward to this at all. And I'll tell you what, I'm so happy to see that Janeway has a proud woman of distinguishment in the field of aeronautics, Sharon O'Donnell. Reminds me that she is the biggest fan of
Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, who she has had never mentioned,
abandoned in the Delta Quadrant.
Who she had never mentioned prior and never mentioned again. The same way that Tom, the big underwater fanatic, has never once mentioned a single other thing about his love of the aquatic. I'm not looking forward to this, Joe, and it's sad because this episode tonight was such a fucking drag.
I'm sorry season 5 is leaving you with some stinkers, but I don't want to make you think this episode is bad before we watch it, because I need to watch it again. It's
Voyager crew members swap stories of their family histories. Chakotay. It's impossible that we're not going to go into the bullshit flute.
Listen, she doesn't have superpowers. She's a white woman from Indiana.
But Chakotay is going to be there. Listen, I know you tracked down the bullshit Indian flute, and I hope you still have it ready,
because it's going to be the backstory is the backstory is a problem flute no matter what.
The 11:59, or as it will become to known, keep your bullshit backstory to yourself, part 2. All right, man.
All right, thanks for listening to Vija Please Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. We'll see you next time.